All right, let's dive right into quarterback here, Jake. So I'm gonna bring back this data sheet. This is free for everyone at linemovement.com, by the way. So make sure you check that out. Resources tab and the NFL data table. So quarterback, Jake. Again, this is our week 2 NFL DFS first look on the Joe Holka Show. Jake Seeley from The Athletic joining us as always. So is there anything that's standing out to you right away, Jake? I'm just kind of looking around a little bit. We have some interesting matchups off the top. Nice to see Dallas in a nice bounce back spot against Atlanta, but Dak is 6,800. So what did you see earlier today when you were checking out quarterback?
Dak at 6,800.
Yeah, right.
Like I don't even. Why am I even going to pay up for Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes if you're going to see with just like the fact that they just got shredded by Russell Wilson? I just don't know how you don't like that name and price just jumps out. Like, how do you not take Dak? So we talk about this all the time. Quarterback's flat to begin with that I don't feel like you have to pivot off. Like, I'm not even going to try and pay up. I think you're going to get enough people that see Aaron Rodgers at $100 more and think Aaron Rodgers back to being Aaron Rodgers, that you're going to get people off that. You're going to get people who don't want to pay 6,800. So I don't think this is one where, you know, I hate the free square thing because that's what Boston Scott was. He was free square, and look what happened. But I feel like Dak Prescott is like your first, second, third choice, and then maybe fourth or fifth you go elsewhere.
Man, he's expensive on FanDuel. He's 8,300 on FanDuel, but blitzbet.eu has the total at 30 to start this week in terms of the team total. So that's the highest of the week, higher than Baltimore, higher than Tampa Bay. So Dak at 6,800 seems like a great place, a great spot to go back to him. We actually had him in the Super Contest, or we had Dallas in the Super Contest, so that was rough this past week. Just a cherry on top with a lot of things that were kind of going wrong. But yeah, I think that the one thing that I always kind of go back to in terms of quarterbacks is we want these guys that are going to throw deep. That's the main thing that we want, right? So average intended air yards is this column right here. It's a next gen stat that I really value. And Dak's just one of those guys that's not afraid to sling it down the field. So I think he's really solid. Wow, look at Josh Allen up at 6,700, Jake. What do you think about that? Can I do my Jake? I guess my Josh Allen victory lap yet, or should we wait a couple more weeks?
No, because if you're going to do that, I have to do my victory lap. You know what my victory lap at quarterback is, right?
It's not Beowulf, is it? Who is it?
100% it's Beowulf. How is it not Beowulf?
I love it, man. I was off Jacksonville.
The Jaguars. Minshew Mania is here, man. I'm telling you. It was here last year, and nobody wanted to get on board. It's here again.
Hate to see it. They're not. Oh no, they are. Let's go back here. I got off the screen share way too quickly. I'm not used to producing and talking at the same time.
I am concerned about them being in Tennessee. That you were gonna. I mean, tonight will be telling with what happens with the Titans defense, but I think the Titans defense is concerning, and I think their pace of play is concerning. So I'm not as excited this week, obviously, with Minshew.
Sure.
If you're going to drop down into this range, I think the obvious one at this price is Jared Goff. If you're going to go this far.
So Jared Goff, 5,800. Interesting against Philly. This banged up.
Like Jared Goff.
Yeah, I like never play this guy, so that's why I'm like trying to work through it a little bit here. We don't have a total for this game yet, unfortunately. I don't know, man. This is one that I'm probably gonna have to come back to a little bit because I never play Jared Goff because he doesn't really run, and I guess it's a little bit more condensed there in the target share than we had last year at times. But in this range, like first kind of Minshew at 5,800 again. Is it time to go back, or is Tennessee? I guess yeah. We'll see what happens tonight in the Monday night. But
if you want to go real balls out here, let's go $300 cheaper. And let's go to Trubisky against the Giants defense.
Man, I already have biases right now because I played Trubisky on at one team, I guess, on FanDuel last week because I was convinced that it was still a decent spot. I mean, if he can't do it, like I guess if he can't go off against Detroit, do we think that he can against the Giants? Is it that much different? Maybe it is.
He kind of did. I mean, isn't that going off? I mean, 3 touchdowns for Trubisky. That's kind of going off.
Yeah, I guess I'm getting a little bit greedy with my $5,500 quarterback.
You're the people complaining about Austin Eckler yesterday. And it's like, oh my God, the guy got 20 touches and 87 yards. Like, if that's Austin Eckler, if you gave me Austin Eckler's going to get 20 touches every single week, I will put it in my lineup every blanking week.
You know what I was upset with though with Austin Eckler? So I ended up pivoting off of DeAndre Hopkins on a team to Eckler because I thought Eckler would be super low owned. He ends up being 28% in the 1,500.
I was shocked.
It was insane. I couldn't believe it. Kamara ended up being lower. So maybe that's a situation where a lot of people pivoted away from Kamara, something like that. But just like basically going up in ownership when I was behind, it was probably over anyway for that team. But yeah, I guess I'm one of those people, man, that's complaining about Eckler when he got 80 yards on the ground and like 3 catches, something like that. It wasn't a disaster by any means.
1 catch, wasn't it? That was the thing. It was 19 carries and 1 catch. I think it was
after halftime. He didn't have any catches, right? Something like that.
Yeah. So that's what, obviously, especially when you're playing half a full PPR, DK full PPR, everybody wants to see more catches. I think we'll see that differently. Like, again, it's still 20 touches. If you told me blank running back was getting 20 touches on most teams, you'd be excited about it. So this is, you and I talk about this for the past 2 years that we've been doing stuff together. And I know we're not talking running backs yet, but as Eckler as a whole, basically other quarterbacks, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. This is what happens when you drink amino energy during the show.
Yeah.
So all that, the bias of being burned, quote unquote, the week before, those are the players that you want to look at in the next week for. You'll get low ownership, and if they bounce back to the players we think they are, you're going to get that low ownership in a great value situation.
In the opposite kind of, I guess, light there, are we going back to Aaron Rodgers after what he just did? He's 6,900. I didn't think we'd see Rodgers get up to this price point so quickly. Obviously, a lot of people were not on him last week. People were playing Devontae Adams, but the stacks that won all the money last week were the Green Bay stacks. So his price is, it's Detroit. A lot of the same reasons, I guess, that we would like Chicago last week. We should be back on Rodgers, but are you going back to the well with that? It's a nice total. I think there's a lot of things that say he could run it back here, but I don't know. Aaron Rodgers scares me, man. He just doesn't take enough chances.
Well, see, part of it too is you mentioned, so the matchup is not even like Chicago or a situation like that with Detroit now this week. Is you look at the Vikings and they reworked their entire defense, and it obviously was miserable for week 1. Is that part of the equation? Obviously, it's a nice matchup again this week going against the Stafford situation. I'll put it this way: I'll go back to Rodgers if Golladay is back. Okay. I feel like if Galladay's not, we saw the Lions struggle in that game. I don't know why Marvin Jones. Hey, maybe credit to the Bears; they were bracketing him a lot. They really didn't see much action until the second half. A lot of it was Amendola and our boy, Holkinson out there at tight end. But I just don't know that the Lions are going to be able to keep pace where Aaron Rodgers is going to have to pass the entire game. And this might be Aaron Jones. Put it this way: I'll go Aaron Jones if no Galladay, and I'll go with the wide receiver stack if Galladay's back.
I like that. Giving people some instant Monday analysis. You're already giving them kind of your scenarios, right, on this Green Bay offense. I'm with you, though. Galladay changes a lot for me, actually. I backed away slowly from the Stafford stacks last week without Galladay. Ended up with a little bit of Hawkinson. But no Marvin Jones for me, thankfully. The problem was if I wasn't playing Marvin Jones, I think I had some Terry McLaurin in those spots, or a little bit too much DJ, something like that. If you dodged one of those and just landed on Calvin Ridley somehow for a little bit more expensive, you're having a pretty good a good week 1, I guess. So Patrick Mahomes,
same
first
guys
time.
I was on, but Marquise Brown saved me in a few spots though.
Man, you used to rip on me for Hollywood Brown last year. Are you on the Hollywood Brown train now?
I've been Hollywood Brown this entire offseason. I used to rip on you last year because of the snap count, and he was he was bad Deshaun Jackson. Now he's good Deshaun Jackson. Like, good Deshaun Jackson, those 2 years in a row, Deshaun Jackson only had like 3 or 4 mediocre games those years. It was mostly good. It's the fact that last year, Marquise Brown, just from the volume and the snap point, now being 100% healthy, now in his second season. Yeah, I guess you didn't watch my stuff this offseason, Joe.
I didn't watch anything this offseason, bro.
Hollywood all the way. I'm with you, 100%.
All right, good stuff. I will say that I do want to circle back to the Deshaun Jackson thing when we get to wide receiver. But Patrick Mahomes, first time on the main slate for us. He's 7,700 against the Chargers. It's I would say one of the tougher types of matchups you can have, but doesn't matter with Patrick Mahomes. The price is what always kind of gets me on Mahomes, because he's not going to give you the rushing upside of Lamar, but he could go out there and throw 5-6 touchdowns at any moment. So is this a spot where you can go to Mahomes? I don't expect him to be super popular at that price and at this matchup against the Chargers, but do you feel differently about it?
Yeah, I'm not. I think I'm going to be off of Mahomes a lot this year.
Me too.
Mostly because it's the price point, and this is going to sound weird to say, but I'll explain it here in a second. He's too efficient. And what I mean is that he's not thrown for 350 yards because he throws the touchdown in one play. Like, it's just like, this offense is so productive that he doesn't need to be 300 yards. He doesn't need to be 5 touchdowns. He could do 3 touchdowns on a $180. He could do 300 yards and 0 touchdowns because they run it's just that's like Patrick Mahomes' giant games are unpredictable, and I think that's the problem. And it's no fault to the Chiefs. This is what makes them so good and so dangerous. It's not the similar situation like Rodgers. If you're going to like him every single week, it's because he's going to be passing a ton. And the same thing with like Matt Stafford and Dak Prescott. The reason we love Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen is because they run so much. But Patrick Mahomes, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, the problem, I guess, with Mahomes is exactly what you're saying. Like, they get down the field too quickly. Like, people used to talk about Tom Brady, just how they would dink and dunk down the field, and they'd have all these like PPR monsters like White and all these guys with like this low average depth of target. But from a fantasy perspective, they would just rack up points because they were moving down the field, I guess, so methodically and a little bit slowly in some ways. So it's an interesting conversation to have for sure. I guess Lamar Jackson's someone that was extremely popular last week for good reason. This is a team that's going to be ahead a lot as well, but he just offers such a safe floor against Houston. This is one that I think is super interesting off the top. I would imagine it's going to be a very popular game overall, but Houston didn't really show me a ton. Obviously, we just saw Patrick Mahomes just absolutely run them over in week 1. Are you back on the Lamar train? Or are you thinking that this is just going to be, I mean, we haven't gotten to see if we find any value at other positions yet, but it's so hard to get all the way up to Lamar at 8,200. He's basically priced at where his peak was last year already. So
yeah, so that's the other reason I had to go deep diving at wide receivers, because I had a lot of Lamar Jackson too. Mm-hmm. And I think that I'm going to have a lot of weeks where I want to get him in, but in a week like this where there's a Dak option, and so I think that's what it's going to come down to. If Dak's in a nice situation, if Mahomes loses a little bit more of his price, there Rodgers. Basically, it's going to have to be a week where Lamar Jackson's now sitting there with, maybe a no Dak, no Mahomes, or like in a bad matchup for one of those guys, just because the price is now it's to the point where it feels like, basketball, it feels like the Russell Westbrook situation. Yeah, you could pay $10,500, but, if you have quarterbacks that equal him and are 2,000 less, that's the problem.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we should kind of look down a little bit for some of these guys that are at least maybe in the mid-range. What do we think about Kylo Murray at 6,100? Like this Washington, I mean, I've already talked about it, but this Washington defensive line looked great this past week. Arizona's offensive line, not an awesome situation, but this Washington team, I still think can be had. Are we believing what we saw so far from Arizona? I mean, I'm so biased when it comes to Arizona. That's why I kind of need your help on this one.
So it's funny because you say so biased. I'm also biased because I've been one of the people that has been on the Washington front seven, might be one of the best units in the league, and that, especially the defensive line, like stop underrating them. Great for fantasy as well. Like they're one of the better teams this week in DK and seasonal, and part of it is because the Eagles' offensive line is so miserable right now. But let's give credit where credit's due to Washington front five when you get in the rotation of the fifth guy. This 7 as a whole, but the passing can definitely been taken advantage of. I mean, we saw Ertz and Goddard both do well. The receivers had some production. Rager had that big catch. So they're still vulnerable. My concern is the Arizona offensive line this first week. It held up better than last year, but still looks vulnerable. Kyler Murray at this price, I think, is going to be very popular. And that's why I don't know if I'll have Murray, just because I feel like a lot of people are going to go there. A lot of people assume Washington's a bad team. And then I feel like Murray in this situation is going to have to do it running, which can be a Josh Allen game. Like, I'm not saying stay away from Murray. I just feel like he's going to be popular. And for that reason, I'm going to kind of skew elsewhere. So
I think the one guy that I'm kind of on just by looking at this quickly that you're probably not going to like, what about our boy Danny Dimes at 5,800 against Chicago? The Chicago team 31st in terms of defending deep passes last year. Danny Dimes throwing it down the field a little bit. Didn't have much time, I would imagine, this past week. But I don't know, man. I'm kind of a Daniel Jones truther in the same way that I like Josh Allen. Like, he'll run and he'll take chances. He's always cheap. There's some options there. Pair him with our boy Saquon Barkley. I don't know. What do you think about Danny Dimes at 5,800? He's right around your boy Minshew, but I can tell you off the top right away, I like him a lot better than Jared Goff.
So there's another one. I'll give you a little sneak preview of something that you haven't seen because you've been so busy. Like myself, I didn't watch any of your crap either.
Yeah, there you go. You can't rip me for that, and I know you didn't watch any of my videos either.
Actually, I did watch. The only thing I watched was I watched you play video games. I actually didn't watch any of your content. I watched your video game content instead. So you remember the show when we did last year? I always said naked Jameis. Stop trying to figure out Godwin or Evans every single week and just play Jameis and stop messing around. So somebody asked me, Joe, before we even did the show last week, somebody said, "Who's your naked Jameis this year?" And I said, "It's Daniel Jones." I told you he's the lesser Jameis Winston, and this year he is now naked Daniel Jones. He's naked Jameis because if Golden Tate's out tonight, Monday Night Football, that's a different scenario. But the problem is is it Shepard? Is it Tate? Is it Ingram? Is it Slayton? Is it Barkley? Like, we know Barkley's fine of itself, but he's got 4 options there. So instead of trying to figure all those pieces out, Daniel Jones also runs, which Jameis Winston didn't do. So go play naked Daniel Jones.
I think you may not have been watching my content, Jake, but you're coming around on guys like Hollywood. You're coming around on guys like Danny Dimes. Like, this is the best, man. We're going to get along.
Coming around. You were just a year early. That's what it was.
That's true. Actually, that's not the best thing to just be early on all these guys either. Like, I guess I was early on some stuff like Noah Fant last year. That was a lot of fun. I played him like 4 times in the 1500 before he actually had that blow up game. He's running all these routes, doing nothing. So yeah, being early is not the best thing, I guess. You got to be there. The timing's got to be right. It seems like you've got that on lockdown, man.